decided to call this the idiotic trader. No, the idiotic investor. And there's a reason for it. There's a lot of idiotic things investors do. You must have seen a few things in your time. I'm not saying you hang around with idiots, but
there are a few. There were a few on the floor, that's for sure.
Go on. Well, you used to be a floor trader. So what are the sort of most idiotic things you've seen? And I'm going to share with you what I've seen this week, which I think a lot of people can learn from.
Actually, I probably shouldn't. The floor was a very difficult environment, so I can't comment on how.
Well, name. You don't have to name names, but there must have been some idiotic things people did.
No, I'm going to keep that to myself.
I forgot. Well, that's going to make a good podcast then. All right, let me tell you something from your previous employer.
David Kyte, what did he say?
David Kyte, he said to me, he said, do you know what, Alpesh? So I went to interview him for the book, Mind of a Trader. And I said, David, you're an absolute legend. You're a floor trader. He's now in the rich list. I said, David, how do you know, which side, when to buy, when to sell? And he goes, you know what? He goes, look down there. So we were I think we were in the gallery at that point, at the live floor. And he says, look at those boys. And they were mainly men. Because they're barrow boys, that was the term used back then. He goes, they haven't got an education. They left school at 16, like him. He said, like him. He goes, do you think we read the macroeconomic reports? Look on the floor. I said, what's on the floor? He goes, do you see a Financial Times on the floor? There's a lot of paper there. I said, no, I don't. He goes, what papers do you see? I'm sort of like looking around. So I see a bit of red. And he goes, yeah, it's the Sun, isn't it? I said, yeah. And then he told me how they pick stocks. Oh, well, how they pick instruments. I mean, you guys were trading. What were you trading under in bunts?
Well, there was the Bund. I wasn't trading that under him, but he did teach me how to trade the Japanese government bond, which was the largest product on the floor. But,
at the time. And so what he said is now people of a certain age will remember, and this was in the book. And I said, do you have a problem with me putting this in the book? He goes, nah. What does he cap? He's successful. He goes, they'd look at page 3 and they would look at certain anatomical features and then decide which way the market's going to go. It was his very barrow boy way of saying, and it sounds idiotic, that they didn't know which way the market was going to go. Also his way of saying that they're a sexist bunch down there. Well, maybe they're not sexist. Maybe they're just heterosexual down there. That's how they pick the market direction. Now, of course, now he'd get cancelled for saying anything like that or shot or something. But that's how they do it. You can also see there is a bigger problem there. You can also see why there weren't many women on the floor, because who wants to be in that kind of an environment?
There was only a handful. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. And there'd be that, and then that leads on to other sorts of behavior, which is not acceptable because it makes the place not a good workplace for not just, it could be gender, could be race, could be anything, obviously. So, we can laugh about it in the sense, boys being boys, barrow boys, but there are broader implications for it. Anyway, he was explaining, I thought that was idiotic, how they picked it. But actually, it was honest. It's, direct.
It was very honest, yes.
And we'll come back in a second about, sort of directions of trades and stuff, and some of the stuff you did. But I want to go back to this week. Okay, so at the time we're recording this 22nd April 2022, but it's important, you might be watching this in the future from one of Elon Musk's spacecrafts. And I think this is still going to be relevant then, which is Bill Ackman just dropped 400 large on Netflix. He lost 400 million on Netflix stock. And he's a billionaire, one of the greatest hedge fund managers. And people are going to look at that and think, what an idiot. What do you think?
Well, there's several things there. Firstly, you need to understand the size of his actual portfolio, and does it actually make an impact overall to his portfolio? And his strategy is probably different. So there's a distinct difference, and this is one of the, anomalies that a lot of people don't understand. There's a difference between investing and trading. And a lot of the time, people, when they get into a long-term trade, long-term investment, that ends up being a short-term trade because they get uncomfortable with it, going in the wrong direction, I suspect. And similarly, when something is going in the wrong direction, what might be a short-term trade ends up being a long-term investment because it's waiting for it to recoup their losses. So
he bought into it back in January.
Sorry, he bought back in. He
3
got
months
into it in
ago.
January.
He went long Netflix 3 months ago, and he lost 400 million and got out after their results when it dropped 25% in a day.
Yeah, because of subscriber figures.
Yeah. So what do you think? Was it idiotic that he got in the first place, or was it idiotic that he got out after it dropped so sharply? Should he just have held on longer? After all, he wasn't trading it because he held on for 3 bloody months. Was it idiotic or not?
Yeah. So each investor will have their own, template on what is good and a bad decision. And if that was his stop loss, ultimately, that's what he's going to be doing, right? So we can't comment on somebody else's. The fact that he's one of the largest and most successful is probably the right thing to do.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. Geezer. He says sitting on nowhere near several billion of assets under management. Mm-hmm. So who cares what I think about this? So I look back at the sort of the trends, the momentum, the technicals on it, because I thought, forget it. I'm not going to work out their subscriber numbers. And I was right not to try, because Bill Ackman couldn't work them out, evidently. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost that. So I thought, forget that. The only thing I've got is the charts. And when I looked at the charts, obviously, I could not guarantee which direction it was going to go in. That was going to go lower. Couldn't guarantee that. I couldn't guarantee the extent to which it would drop. No chance. People might in hindsight say, oh, it was obvious it was going to drop. Look at all without COVID. Look at all these other blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, that's just hindsight talking.
Exactly.
And I couldn't do those. And I watch for hindsight bias. The only thing I could say is that it was more likely than not, given the momentum from the MACD, stochastic, all the rest of it, it was more likely than not, in my experience, it was going to go lower than higher. Now, many a time, the minority decision on that, i.e., when I thought it's more likely to fall than rise, it's actually bloody risen after numbers, and it could well have done. It just didn't on this. It fell. I didn't know how far it would fall. I wasn't sure it would definitely fall, but I did think more likely than not. Now, here's the interesting thing. Well, if I thought that, why didn't I just go to Ladbrokes and bet for Netflix to fall? Reason was, I wasn't sufficiently confident it was going to drop lower, that I'd placed that bet. So I'm not being hindsighted, and I'm not putting my money where my mouth is. So what would you do in that position? Well, you do what I did. You stay away.
Exactly.
Stay away. And that's what I did. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's idiotic what he did, either to get out of the bottom or to get in the first place. I'm sure many talking heads will, but hopefully this will give them an insight into how proper traders and investors actually think about those things.
Well, you make a good point there, because even seasoned professionals, you could claim, make stupid decisions, and that could well be one. So
many a time my fat fingers have added an extra zero when they weren't meant to. Right. And I've thought, well, that's the end of it. And many a time I've managed to somehow survive another day. So I need to get special keyboards with keys which are further apart. So as I get fatter, it's it's definitely. The other thing, speaking of idiotic things this week, so I had a WhatsApp message from a friend. God, if he's watching this, he's going to think, how dare you call me? I'm not calling him an idiot. And he said, Alpesh, yeah. And like many people I've got following me, they're desperate to get into the market, because they've had 2 or 3 years of great gains. So they're thinking, how do I get my hit? I need that dopamine. It's been a while. And by the way, as I'm speaking, the Dow is down 620 points today. Yeah. All right. So, I'm sure if I call him now, he'll be like, oh, God, thank God I didn't get in. You were right, Alpesh. So he said to me, Microsoft, and he's got onto exchange traded funds. And he goes, yeah, so I've got my triple leverage on Microsoft. I said, what the bloody hell are you doing with triple leverage? He goes, no, I'm sure you said somewhere triple, but Microsoft's the only one you do 3 times leverage on. I said, no. I was trying to explain, I don't like 3 times leverage. If I had to, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, do it anywhere, because the maths doesn't work out. So there's a whole bunch of people. Anyway, the old saying, a fool and his money is soon parted. And I think that's the danger with the market at the moment. Down 600 points, but people are so addicted, they want to get in. It's like, buy the dip, when do we get in? People don't want to sit on the sidelines. What lessons do you have on sideline sitting and anything idiotic you've seen?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And a lot of the times, David used to say, just sit on your hands when there is nothing to do. There is nothing to do. You've got to just sit on your hands. And it's a very difficult thing to do for sure, because you're sat at the desk and you feel you have to, because that's your job. You have to press a button or participate in a market that's probably not doing anything at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not an easy, yeah, for sure.
Do you know, I've told this story before, but it just reminded me. I used to live opposite Cave la Mutai, which sort of, on my deathbed, it was one of the 100 things I'll think, well, it wasn't too bad. Cave was the highest paid employee in the world, in the UK at the time. So we're on Hamilton Terrace, and his house is directly outside my front room. Is this place opposite? And when I first went to meet Cave, again, for the same book David was in, Cave walked in. I was at one end of the room. He walked in, and I was in the waiting room. He walked in, and he said, one of the things he said was, do you know what? We spend a lot of time doing nothing. Because I come in, I got to read the paper. I said, but you get paid so much.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, well, we try and look busy. We read the newspaper and stuff, but most of our day is to do nothing. It's to find maybe one good trade if we can. But he goes, I can't look like I'm not doing anything, because otherwise they're not going to pay me all the money, are they?
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. And it is. It's counterintuitive. You see some person in, I don't know, in a developing economy walking 2 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles a day carrying water, and you feel, well, wait a minute, this finance thing, this whole global system's screwed up, because I'm actually getting paid for sitting and doing zero. Thankfully, the obesity and the prostate cancer will kill me from sitting at a desk all day long. So at least there is some justice to that, because walking is good for you. But, it forces people who've got money itching to lose it, to take risks with it. And I think that's the thing, that patience. You've got lots of patience. Yeah. You're a calm, meditative.
Well, it's true, but that's been developed over many years, and even now, I still make the schoolboy errors, because you do want to do something, but it's a constant battle. In the words of William Blake, there's constant mental fight one has. But what you're suggesting, actually, it's interesting talking about the floor initially. Because if you imagine, there were hours between moments when there is nothing to do on the floor. So there may be odd bits and pieces, broker phone calls, things and going on. But the most active was at 9:30, 1:30, or when there's numbers out, basically. And if you extend that to an investor, really what you have to wait for numbers to come out for you then to react and actually do something. Yeah. So there's an element of that where you're investing and the time scales are bigger on the floor, shorter, maybe a couple of hours before you actually do anything. So and those moments is when you realize, okay, that's when, if I've stuck to the rules, I've been very patient, waited and not second guessed what might happen or might not happen. Because then you get, one of the rules we had on the hedge fund actually was to get out of all stock before the day before the results came out, because we just didn't know. We don't have a crystal ball, as you say, on those numbers. And about a month before, there's momentum driving it in anticipation of something happening. So
And would you guys not follow the old wisdom of buy the rumor, sell the fact, and all of that? Would you just say, nope, we're going clear on this, whichever direction it's going in?
No, that was the policy of that particular hedge fund. We ran that particular strategy. We would get out a day before, not hold it at the end of the day. It might go in the same direction. We could have made a lot more, but that was,
it's interesting. You
could argue,
because honestly, on TikTok and Twitter, the investors are always telling me, oh yeah, you buy the rumor, sell the fact. Didn't you know this? I saw an app. Somebody was advertising where they said that. It's dangerous how, speaking of idiot investors and idiot traders, I'm worried about where people are getting their knowledge nowadays. But we better save that for our next broadcast next week. I want to try and do these weekly, and hopefully what people will do is they'll find it a bit funny. We'll pick up. There'll be in this week more idiotic trading and investment things people will have done, and I'll share them with you and see what I found, and you can share your experiences. So we'll do the next one in a week. Otherwise, we don't want this being
Yeah,
a
Friday
full-time
evening's always a
occupation.
good day. See what's happening in the week. Okay.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to count us out.
All right.
I'm
Cool.
not going to count us out.